Steel City. Is everybody ready to go? Let's proclaim the greatest radio show.
Welcome, fans, to another Week 16 segment of Fantasy Football. I'm your host, Jim Sella, in studio with Jay Dash and Johnny Parlay. We got some running backs for you for this week. Could be your championship week, could be the week right before. Either way, you're going to need to know who to play. Dash has got everybody we need, so let's get it started.
Real quick, I want to say congratulations to the both of you and myself. This is our 100th edition of The Spread.
Is it?
Yippee, baby.
Spread 100.
Tier 1, DeMarco Murray, Le'Veon Bell, Matt Forte, Jamal Charles, Arian Foster, Marshawn Lynch, and LaShawn McCoy.
Out of that bunch, I'm going to say it kind of as a Yinzer and kind of as an analyst, but I think Charles has the biggest chance to struggle. And maybe McCoy, but McCoy hasn't really been that elite this year.
See, yeah, it's McCoy to me. Well, he's been playing well, but this week he has a very tough matchup. The one thing Washington can do is stop the run.
They just can't put any points in the board.
Yeah, they do have a problem with that.
Well, I see two running backs in the Tier 1 who will be participating in my Super Bowl, my fantasy Super Bowl, one on each team. I got Murray. He's got Forte. Murray versus Forte. Who's scoring more, J-Dash?
Murray.
I say Murray scores more. He has a good matchup versus Indy this week, and Detroit's defense is very good, so Forte could have some problems, especially with Jimmy Clausen at quarterback.
Even with this injury situation where they're saying game time decision, all signs point to DeMarco Murray playing, but I'm still a little nervous.
Yeah,
it's just
you got to keep an eye on it, but there's no way in hell I am sitting DeMarco Murray.
Worst case scenario, he might fumble. What's that, -1 or 2?
He does have some fumbling problems, but that doesn't matter.
He ain't fumbling. You guys are crazy. Shut up.
All right, Tier 2. Must starts right now. C.J. Anderson, Eddie Lacy, Fred Jackson, Justin Forsett, and Rashard Jennings.
I really like C.J. Anderson this week. Cincinnati can stop the pass, but they do have problems against the run, and he's been on fire recently.
They're going to keep feeding him in the rock if he keeps getting the job done, because I don't think Peyton's falling off, but as it gets later into the year, his arm's getting a little tired. He's an older guy just by normal NFL standards, let alone having his neck fused together. He had a little bit of issues with his nerve in that right shoulder and right trap. I'm sure Brandon could tell us more about that, but basically Peyton's kind of got a dead arm.
He's had that all season.
I know, but it's getting later in the year, so it's getting even worse.
Hit that man.
They're going to rely on CJ.
Tier 3, Joik Bell, Mark Ingram, and Trey Mason.
Imposter Bell's going up against Chicago.
Who?
Yeah, he's the Imposter Bell, my friend.
How dare you. He's my RB2.
RB2. Well, he's going to get some points because Chicago gives up the 14th most fantasy running backs. Bell's the only back worth anything in Detroit. Reggie Bush is garbage. Kim Kardashian crushed him. Bell's the only one being used in the passing game now as well. He had 91 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground versus Chicago in Week 13. Those were both season highs. Their defense hasn't gotten any better, so look for that to happen again, most likely.
Well, I see, again, two running backs in my fantasy Super Bowl in the same tier. We've got Ingram, who my opponent has, and I've got Joik Bell. Who's going to outperform J-Dash?
Well, Mark Ingram has the better matchup. He goes versus Atlanta. They let up the most of fantasy running backs, and he did have 2 TDs against them last time he played them. But he has just 1 rushing TD in his last 6 games, and 6 of his 7 rushing TDs this season have come on the road. So he's not playing as good at home, and I think it's Joik Bell. Like Jim said, he's the only running back worth anything in Detroit's offense, and their passing game hasn't been that great recently. They've been relying on Joik Bell heavily, and he's been getting it done. So I definitely like Joik Bell in this matchup.
Nice.
Atlanta,
I feel like the dude of these two who gets more touches will have more points.
Atlanta shut down Le'Veon Bell, so there's no reason they can't shut down Mark Ingram.
Yeah.
That's right. Shut him down, Atlanta.
Tier 4, Lamar Miller, Jeremy Hill, Matt Asiata, and Daniel Boom, high on Heron.
Yeah, Heron wasn't used in the passing game much last week, but he did have 60 yards on the ground on 11 carries, so he was working very well on the ground. Indy's offense looked like crap last week, like I said a couple times, but I'm still trusting Boom Heron here. He's the only running back they really have. We don't like Trent Richardson. I say Boom Heron has a bounce-back week this week.
Boom goes the dynamite.
So I see that here in Tier 4, we've got Matt Asiata, who I picked up just in case DeMarco Murray don't play. But I also got Trey Mason, who's in Tier 3. So I suppose something happens Saturday, Sunday game time rolls around, and there's no DeMarco Murray. Am I going with Mason then over Asiata?
Yeah, I would definitely go with Mason. The Giants have problems stopping a run. But Asiata isn't a bad play either. He's used in the passing game a good bit, and Bridgewater's been finding him the ball. He had 7 catches last week for 50 yards, so he's not a terrible play. But yes, Mason, definitely I would go with him.
Well, I certainly had to scour for free agents, and he was in there, so I figured best available, go with it. But hopefully I won't need that. Murray's going to be just fine.
Next year you should go and pick up everybody Justin False tries to pick up right before he gets them.
Justin False, he ain't the truth. He's done. His career fantasy is over. He may be exiled. He may be the Ray Rice team.
Oh!
You hear that, Justin False?
Tier 5, Alfred Morris, Andre Williams if Rashard Jennings is unable to go, Giovanni Bernard, and Steven Jackson.
I'm not saying Bernard's completely fallen off in Sin City, but he's kind of lost a little favoritism from Coach Marvin Lewis. I think they have a lot more trust in Jeremy Hill. That being said, I think it's mostly just because Hill is the better running back. Bernard's more of a scat back and a third down back than an every down back, but he has big play potential. And going up against Denver, although they give up the 9th fewest points to fantasy running backs, there's big playability. They're a lot like the Steelers kind of want to be, and they get to the quarterback fast. So if you can get on some misdirections or some counters, you might get them to over-pursue one way, and then Bernard could be off to the races.
Yeah, if Denver's able to score a lot of points in this game, which Johnny Parlay hopes doesn't happen, but if they do, Giovanni Bernard could become really involved in his passing game.
Yeah, he'll see much more playing time than Hill.
Tier 6, Pierre Thomas, Latavius Murray, Shane Vereen, who is questionable, and Jonathan Stewart.
How do you keep track of which running back's playing in Carolina? You do all this work on all these other people. I don't even know that it changes like every other half. Jesus, this is crazy.
Carolina?
Yeah, somebody's always hurt in Carolina.
Well, D'Angelo Williams is always hurt in Carolina.
Please believe.
So it's never going to be him, I'll tell you that. But Pierre Thomas, I like this matchup this week. He goes versus Atlanta. They let up the most of fantasy running backs. Like we said, we like Mark Ingram too. But he's being used in the passing game. He had 5 catches last week for 83 yards and had 7 for 58 against Atlanta in week 1. So if this is a high-scoring game, Pierre Thomas could be used just like we were talking about Giovanni Bernard in Cincinnati.
What about Shane Vereen at the Jets? They're really good against running backs, the 5th fewest points against fantasy backs. He's had 3 straight single-digit fantasy performances and no more than 11 fantasy points in PPR on the road since week 1 when he had 17. He did have 8 catches for 71 yards and 2 touchdowns with 43 rushing yards against the Jets in week 7.
Yeah, that was his biggest game of the year.
With LeGarrette Blount there now, he's probably only going to be used in the passing game and not really get too many carries, even though it's not like Blount's breaking the bank on carries. New England running backs are always crazy, like we always say, but the Jets suck. And, I mean, if you had to play one of these guys, I'd probably pick Vereen.
Stay away.
Yeah, if you have something else you can put in over a New England running back, you want to. But if I'm going to play a New England running back, I'm picking Vereen. Tier 7, Isaiah Crowell, Brandon Oliver, and Frank Gore, who is questionable.
Frank Gore's career is questionable right now.
That's right. I had him. He was like my 3rd pick, I think, this year. 3rd or 4th in my draft. And wow, what a waste of a pick.
Yeah, I told Easy to take Toby Gerhardt, so I don't feel bad.
He was actually knocked out of last game with a concussion, but Carlos Hyde got hurt too, and it doesn't look like he's going to play.
So Mashed Potato Brains is going to play? Does that mean?
If he plays, it's not a horrible play. There's worse plays, but I still want to stay away from Frank Gore. Tier 8, Doug Martin, Kerwin Williams, and LeGarrette Blount, who was questionable.
Well, yeah, his ethics are questionable, but is he going to play?
I don't know. He may play, he may not. It's New England's backfield. He might not see another carry the rest of the season for all we know.
Do you think he'd walk off the field early on Bill Belichick?
No, probably not. Kerwin Williams, he had 34 carries for 175 yards over the past 2 games, and they were against good run defenses. This is another good run defense he's going up against, but he's seen the most time in Arizona. So if you're going to take an Arizona running back, I would go with Kerwin Williams.
Nah, Kerwin Williams, stick to paint, man.
Tier 9, Ryan Matthews, who is questionable and he's not expected to play. Chris Ivory, Chris Johnson, and Reggie Bush.
Not expected to play none of these guys. If you have a fantasy owner, none of these guys should be expected to play.
Especially Reggie Bush.
It's
Dude,
a lot easier in a
lost it.
8-team league, though, man.
Oh, ouch.
You got to remember, some people
That
play in up to
stings.
14-team
That's a good
leagues.
point. That's a good point.
I still wouldn't play Reggie Bush.
Yeah, I'd try not to. He does have a good matchup, though.
Yeah, but he doesn't
no
really
touches.
get carries. Yeah,
No
and
touch.
the Lions aren't throwing the ball like they were last year.
Right.
So he's not involved in the passing game like he was. He's not a between the tackles runner. He got a little better at it in his career, but he's still not. He always wanted to pretend he was. He was a scat back who could return punts. Kardashian's the best thing he ever did.
Tier 10, Terrence West, Alfonso Smith, and Roy Halu Jr.
Terrence West, was he the one that got 100 yards against the Steelers?
Yes, he is.
Carolina's pretty bad against the run. They gave up the 8th most points to fantasy running backs. West remains involved in the offense, but the production hasn't been there a lot. He did have 14-plus carries in 4 of his last 7 games, so, with Manziel at quarterback, they may want to try to feature the run a little bit more. He may get a couple more carries.
They also got Isaiah Crawwell out there, too, though, who has looked like the better back recently.
Well, what if he gave him the mumps? Because we all know that that's going around in Pittsburgh, so he could just drive down, get a little bit of Sidney Crosby's DNA, give Crawwell the mumps, and then the job's his, right?
Yeah, if they want to go through all that to play Carolina.
Well, I mean, I would if my job was on the line.
If Frank Gore sits and Carlos Hyde sits, which looks likely for Hyde at least, Alfonso Smith might end up being the starting running back in San Francisco. So there's at least that there for him if you have no running back and you're looking for something.
If Jeff Keel keeps doing good on these segments, I may have to give him the mumps or he's going to steal my job.
Tier 11, how about this? C.J. Spiller may be back this week.
Who cares?
Darren Sproles and Donald Brown.
Well, of
Who
course
cares?
you got to play
Who
Sproles.
cares?
Yeah, nobody cares about C.J. Spiller.
We're going to play Sproles?
Easy loves Sproles, dude. He wants to marry him.
This ain't 2011, bro.
He don't care.
Sproles did score last week, but again, he gets no more than 4 touches a game. LaShawn McCoy's obviously the workhorse in that offense. It's too hard to trust Sproles.
I bet you Sproles scores after every game.
He does have talent, though. Tier 12, Benny Cunningham, Charles Sims, and Trent Richardson.
Trent Richardson's garbage. We shouldn't even be allowed to talk about him.
Okay, then Tier 13, Nile Davis, Jonas Gray, and Philip Tanner, who may also see some time for San Francisco.
These guys, I refer to these guys as museum exhibit
See,
guys.
I
Don't touch.
think-
Don't touch.
I wouldn't play Nile Davis, obviously, because
Did
Charles
you see what
ahead
he
of
did
him,
last week,
But
though?
I think he's a good back.
He blew up last week. He had like a 70-yard touchdown, reception, and another touchdown on the ground.
Yeah, he's definitely got some talent. He's just stuck behind Jamal Charles, who's a beast.
Well, who knows? If the Steelers' defense is able to stop Charles, maybe they put Nile Davis in for a couple extra plays and he breaks one.
He might. That would suck for us. Well, I want to thank fans for listening. Thank you guys for coming in studio. You guys can follow us on Twitter at bet_the_spread. Tweet us any questions you got. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to that YouTube channel. You know the drill.
Do work.